Awesome. We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us from LinkedIn, YouTube, or within the puzzle community. Today we have a topic every organization. Oh, I have some echoes. There we go. We have a topic every organization aspires towards because it's really the key to stress-free operations. And Kronda, you came up with that title for our webinar today, and I absolutely love it. But most organizations, as we know, it's hard to figure out what is the best way to actually create process documentation because every team has workflows and they live in people's heads. They're lengthy SOPs in Google Drive or SharePoint. And then add in the fact that these processes change faster than the documentation can actually keep up. And so it's a double-edged sword. It's hard to do, but we know that documentation is the foundation for clarity across your team and also identifying opportunities for automation and AI. So when it's done well, it becomes the highest leverage tool in your operations as the DNA of your company. And so today we've brought together some operators that I have so much respect for, who have built documentation for collectively 10,183 workflow steps. I took all of your steps that you all have created in Puzzle. In the last 2 years, you all have created 10,000 workflow steps, which is just amazing work. This group really knows how to make documentation work for their team. So I'm excited to jump in, and I would like to have our guests introduce themselves. So without further ado, Kronda, do you want to kick us off with an introduction?
Sure. I'm Karanda Adair, and I'm the CEO of Karvel Digital. I started it 13 years ago, almost 14 years ago, making $500 WordPress sites. So I've come a long way. And I've pivoted a lot throughout my career. I've done content marketing coaching for business owners. Most recently, I've done a lot of marketing automation and business automation for business owners. And about a year and a half ago now, I found Puzzle and jumped in with both feet. I don't make software changes typically very quickly. My tech stack was pretty stable for about 10 years. And so when I found Puzzle, I sent a breakup text to Miro and Lucidchart and Whimsical and literally never looked back. And so I've always done process mapping for my folks. A lot of my clients have, neurodivergences that mean that if they can't see it, it might as well not exist. And so I've always been struggling to figure out how to visually present things. And Puzzle has just been so effective. There's literally never been a tool that does this that's specifically built for business process mapping. And so I'm now pivoting to focus 100% on process mapping and systems and technology consultations and really helping people and organizations master this because it is that important and there is no one really doing it like this. And so I'm just really excited about Puzzle, obviously. You were wrong about your prediction, though. I have tea this morning.
Right.
um, but yeah, very excited about it, and just really happy to give people that moment of clarity when they tell me, okay, this is what's happening, and then I'm like, dragging boxes as fast as I can, and then I flip it around and I show them and I say, is this what you said? And they're like, oh, that's what I've been carrying in my head. So yeah, that's me.
Kronda, thank you. You've always shared your aha moments that you've had with clients when you map out their processes, and I've yet to have anyone have an aha moment when they look at a wall of text. There's no aha moment to happen. There's no aha moment to happen, which is why the visual component of that is so important. So thank you, Kronda. Samantha, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone. I'm Samantha Pointer, owner of Samantha Pointer Enterprises, and I'm a business and automation strategist. I help do implementation, and I help small business owners and CEOs automate the tedious. My background is I was a professional organizer before I got into this, so I'm all about documentation, organization of those things. And so I actually learned about puzzle from Kronda because she can attest that I hated mapping because we both learned that you should map before you hop into any tool. And we were using Lucidchart, which I hate, and I've done Miro and Whimsical, which lessen the blow, but still hated mapping. And when she showed us puzzle, I was like, oh my God. And it's so easy with using it with my own clients. Even if they're not tech savvy, they just get it. They get it as soon as you open it up and start showing them, oh, this is laying it out. Like they literally get it. It's like no huge learning curve or anything. So that's what I love about puzzle.
Awesome, Samantha. Well, I'm happy you're here, and I'm excited to have a lengthy conversation on how you put puzzle to work. Jesse, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Jesse Parker. I'm currently over at Fillout leading kind of go-to-market enterprise sales, customer experience based things. We're still a smaller company, so I wear quite a few hats over there. Um, I'm also the founder of my own business, Life Coach Operations, where I help other life coaches, I'm a certified life coach, leverage automation and AI in their businesses and kind of bringing that operational expertise to those folks. But before that, I worked at Zapier for about a decade as one of the founding employees over there and had quite a bit to do in the very initial parts of their internal process documentation and sort of doing the same over at Fillout right now. So this is a very timely conversation for sure. And I think I found Puzzle probably around the same time as Kronda did,
Mm-hmm.
probably when I think you were still in beta.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting on a call with you, Brian, and you giving me probably like the best demo ever. It was so clear and so easy to see how this tool was so valuable, specifically because I feel like it was designed for operators, and it's simple enough. Like we don't have to worry about all the crazy shapes and things that do all that, but even having the ability to just have the apps already in an app library and being able to associate those with steps was like a huge game changer for me. So I also sent all of my breakup texts to all of the other platforms that I was also using because I was like, oh, okay, I can iterate so quickly on this. And I use Puzzle in my group program with my clients who are not, operational people, but we come in there and we visualize everything in Puzzle, and it's like, oh, this is how my business actually works. This is what it looks like. These are all of the extra steps that I'm taking, and they love it. And I think most of them have like purchased their own Puzzle account now as well. So
Awesome, Jesse. Yeah, you all actually
yes.
did come around the same time to puzzle, and have been just so loyal and great like teammates. I really do feel like you all are teammates with the feedback that you give and how engaged you are with the community. So I'm very appreciative of
I think I sent
your
you like
partnership.
40 messages in the first 2 weeks. I was like, can you do this? Can you see, this list should really be alphabetized. Can you?
For sure. For sure. There's no doubt. You all are picky, and I love it. I love it because that's what makes that platform that much better. So let's start diving into things. We have a few people in the chat here. We have Luciano over from Italy,
Wow.
who came in. Vinod in India is with us, and then Michael L, who actually posed a question, and maybe we actually just start with a question from the community. That way, um, more people are encouraged to post questions in the comments because we will take those questions and answer them here. So Michael L asked here, do you have any insight on how to use Puzzle to help me with my service-based business? Michael is a one-person company. So, obviously documentation becomes super valuable for, larger organizations when you have to delegate and, you're doing more larger scale system implementations. But how does it help a one-person company?
I mean, I can hop into that as a one person company again. I mean, I went from having a team of 7 to last year getting going back to just me. And so I think that makes it even more important to get everything out of your head, I don't think the size of the company actually matters to the importance of doing this work. I think if you're one person, that means you're literally carrying everything. And so it's really important to get it out of your head and be clear about what's happening. And even as a one person company, we don't do this in a vacuum. You're probably going to bring help in, even if that's like, a part-time VA or temporary help of some kind, and to be able to literally show them and say, this is what's happening and this is the part I need you to do, is really valuable. And being one person doesn't make it less valuable than being 20 or 50 or 100 people. It's just the scale of it. So that's my take on that.
I'm also a one person company, and it just helps me. I think when you're one person, you kind of neglect your own stuff. And so making sure that you've already documented your process, you can go back and look, and it's like, oh, that's why I did it like that, or that's how I'm doing it. Because when you're in the moment and wearing all the hats, it can be easy to forget how you actually do things. So uh, I utilize it to put in all the tech I'm using, all the uh, how on board, how off board, all those things. So just to keep in my remembrance what I'm doing. And it like Rhonda said, it does make it easier to hand off as you expand your team, bring in new team members. You have the ability to embed video and steps, so that just takes more pressure off of you when you're ready to expand.
Yeah. And I'll add here too that the majority of the clients that I work with on the life coach operations side are one person teams. Like maybe sometimes they have a VA, but primarily like the value that we're getting out of process mapping in that regard is one, a lot of times like we don't really know how our business works. Like we underestimate all of the things that we're doing. And so the first thing we do is get clarity on like, okay, these are like the 7 core systems of a business. Like this is how my marketing funnel works, and this is how I convert clients, and this is how I run discovery calls, and this is how I, manage people after, and this is how I have referrals, right? There are certain systems that are relevant to every business, like, regardless of the size. So that's one. But the other second like core piece of value here is that the folks that I work with, they come to me and they're like, oh my gosh, like I feel so overwhelmed and like I'm doing all of these things, but I'm not actually progressing my business forward. And I can't, for the life of me, figure out why that is. And so when we start breaking down all those processes and getting granular in that way, we're like, oh, that's because like 80% of your time is copying and pasting back and forth to this spreadsheet, which they wouldn't have told me in the beginning. And then we can find opportunities for automation and AI and all of that stuff. Because when you're a one person company, right, you really have to focus on how you're spending your time and how you're leveraging your time and making sure that the majority of it is creating value and probably profit, right, for your business and value for your customers. So yeah, I think that it is probably, I don't know, the most important when you have a one person business.
Yeah.
Great points. Great points. And we had a question come through about how you use documentation generally too. It could be in puzzle, it could be in a written documentation, whatever it is, or a video walkthrough. How do you use that documentation? And this is a great question because all three of you are agencies, right? You are your own business. You're trying to constantly prove yourself, frankly, or justify your fee to upsell and do all this kind of stuff. So I'm curious to know, how do you use documentation to kind of upsell new services and provide new services that you can offer a client?
The whole picture being worth 1,000 words. I mean, I when I first started using Puzzle, I was just trying to figure it out for myself. So I started by building out things for myself. And then the second thing I did was I started using it on sales calls, because again, a lot of my people, if they can't see it and visualize it, then it doesn't exist. It's just this sort of amorphous idea. And so I started using it on sales calls. So when I was talking earlier about, people are telling me what's happening, those initial scenarios were sales calls where I'm literally mapping as they talk. And then, when they're done, I turn it around and I say, okay, is this what you told me about what's going on in your business? And immediately when they can see it, they're like, oh yeah, that. And now that I see it, oh, we missed this gap over here, and I forgot to tell you this thing over here. And so just the act of them experiencing that clarity on the sales call like helped my closing rate tremendously, because they're like, oh, if I'm getting this much relief just from, this thing that you've shown me, that I'm actually am doing all these things and carrying all this. When you said copy and paste, Jesse, it's like that is so universal. So yeah, so I use Puzzle for literally if someone needs to see it, then I will use Puzzle to show it to them.
For me, I use it in my proposals. I've used it on sales calls. It is, seeing it is like, oh, especially in real time as they're telling you what's going on. It's kind of hard to articulate without the visual. So that's how I use it in my own business.
Yeah, and I've used it. Sometimes I run like free workshops or webinars called Automation Hour, where any coach, you don't have to be like kind of in my ecosystem or my client or whatnot, can come to that call and ask questions. And very often I'm like, oh, okay, does your process look like this? And I start sharing my screen and mapping things out in Puzzle. And I love that we can like get a share link to a specific section of Puzzle, because I get to send them home with that link and they can view the things that we talked about, the steps that they need to implement. And then if they want to, work with me a little bit further and dive into the process, right, then we can talk about a one-on-one engagement. So I'm using it kind of like for a, pre-sales value in that regard. But I'm also using it again inside of my group program for coaches to that's the first place we start, is like, just show me the layers of your business, get in Puzzle and start mapping that. And the clarity that comes from that is so valuable to these folks that, as an ops nerd, I'm like, oh, like, Puzzle is like really cool, and we can calculate the step cost and see all these inefficiencies and opportunities for automation. But what I didn't expect was my clients to, I think, love it as much as I do and be able to get as much clarity around their businesses. And now I have them coming to me and they're like, I'm planning out an offer. I'm working on this new process. Can I share my puzzle with you? Can we look at this together? And so it's been really nice to kind of see that all come together in that way.
I
Ooh,
think before
welcome.
we move on, I want to just double click on the whole process costing of it all, because I run a workshop every month about process mapping, and part of that is a live mapping session where I'm like, okay, let's pick one process and we'll just live map it out so you can see it. And so, I have one where she's running a webinar using Eventbrite every month, and she's telling me all the things that she's having her VA do, which is manually downloading CSVs, manually adding tags, manually uploading, all these things. And then I can say, like, well, tell me how much you're paying your VA. And we can say, how much time are they spending on these things? And then I can show her, like, hey, you're spending $2,600 a year for your VA to copy and paste.
Right.
And that just really hits people where they live. And when I did it on a sales call last week, she was like, oh shit, I pay my VA $45 an hour. So like it's kind of a no-brainer, like, to show the ROI and then be able to copy that process and say, well, if you automate these two steps, you're going to half that labor cost, and be able to literally show people that it really makes a huge impact.
Awesome,
Yeah.
Kronda. Anything to
I tell
add there?
people too. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I just wanted to say, like, when folks are coming to me and they're considering like a one-on-one paid engagement, like where we're going to work together for a couple of months, and maybe there's some like money objectives about the cost, and like, oh, I don't know. We always do kind of like an activity audit where we do some like preliminary, like I try to calculate their return on time invested. Like that's a key metric that I use. And so when they come to me and they're like, oh, I don't know about spending this, I said, it's easy for me to say, you're already spending it. You're already spending that money. You're already spending the time. Like our work together is to eliminate that unnecessary cost and like get you to where you want to go faster, more efficiently, and without you constantly being that person to push the button. So I find that language works well and is very true. Is if you're worried about investing in this, you are already spending that money in inefficiencies in your business. I guarantee it.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome. I want to shout out a couple of users here. We have Peter from Belgium. We have Pam from the UK. Herman from Tampa. We're all over the world here with our audience. There is a question that came up, and Jesse, I'm going to target you to take this first because I know this is a topic that you have come to me with, which is I would like to know how you recommend mapping processes that use automation scenarios and whether you document the granularity of those automations or you use more of like a high level map to explain how an automation works. So take it away.
Yeah, so I think it depends on the overall size of the process. So I'm like somebody that likes to default to granularity. But if I was working at like a 200-person company and trying to map out all of their marketing workflows and there were like 80 zaps that had to do with everything, I might not create one giant granular map. I would probably leverage like the go-to steps in puzzles so I can have more of a high level overview of what the system is and then break it down. There is a Zapier integration, so you can bring over the step to your Zap. But one of the reasons why I like to go more granular personally is I really want to understand the level of effort involved, even if that level of effort is on the automation side. Because one of the first places that I look for inefficiencies is elimination, right? There's a lot of ways that we can get inefficiencies by asking ourselves, is this actually necessary? And so that's a big reason why I prefer to get granular, is because if I am granular here and here and here and here, and I notice there's like a connected pattern, right? Like workflows don't live in their own sort of ethers. It's all part of a big system working together to get different results. If I can see those steps kind of laid out, I can be like, oh, okay, these 4 workflows are all interacting with that worksheet and it's all this kind of like data manipulation. Could I just leverage that in the system and then cut out these 4 steps for all these automations anyway? So that's kind of the way that I think about it. But yeah, I would love to hear how others approach this because I know this is a great topic and everybody sort of has their own thoughts and feelings and approaches around it.
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
do big picture, and depending on what it is, I get granular on some things. Um, but I like the overall big picture, and then within that tool, listing out the whole process there. Um, that way you don't have an unwieldy map that's just huge. I also utilize the segments, especially if we're talking about different departments, how things connect, how it flows from sales to operations to, you know, I go a little more granular on those things within the segment. But I really love listing out within the actual tool, the steps, unless it's like an email sequence and I really need each one to be seen, then I will break that down.
I tend toward granularity, I would say. I think earlier on in my puzzle journey, there were times when I would map out, like an entire active campaign automation, and then I was like, that's probably too far. Um, so it also depends. Like if it's onboarding, which is usually the thing that we start with first with a lot of clients, then I will be very granular. One, for the visibility of the client, so they can see like, hey, this is everything you have to do or that has to get done to onboard a client. And two, if it is affecting how I'm going to build or how I'm going to instruct somebody else to build, and they need to see that granularity. And I know you recently came out with the alias step type, which I haven't had a chance to use much, but I love because a lot of times with my non-technical clients, they don't need to see the level of granularity that a builder would need to see. And so I
Mm.
really like the idea of abstracting that out and saying, here's your big picture that's not gonna make your eyes glaze over.
Right.
So you know what's going on, but you don't need to see the build notes and why we did this in Airtable and
Mhm.
so I love that.
Very nice. You know, I can share my screen and show you a little high level map alias thing, because that feature is a game changer here. Let's go ahead and share our screen to check this out right here. All right, can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Kronda was referencing an alias step. And what you're looking at here, obviously, it's a huge map of what is Puzzle's revenue operations. So this is from first, visit of the Webflow website into our Typeform form. And there's tons of things that happen across Clay, Lemlist, Zapier. We validate emails via zero bounce, and then it goes into an outbound sequence where we reach out in ADIO. But obviously, if you're not a systems person, all of this detail doesn't really matter. So if I wanted to give a new hire just a quick rundown of the overall flow of how our processes work, I would come to something like this, which is a tab called High Level Map. And what this high level map is, it actually has the same steps that are in that granular RevOps map, and it's using this thing called alias step. So you can see that all of the details in that other step are just being pulled in this sidebar right here. We still have the type form step. We still have the ADIO enrollment sequence all the way through when someone signs up. So I just wanted to reference the alias step there. And anytime you change details in the source step or the step within your high level map, it will sync those details.
Nice.
So it will stay in sync. So I want to pivot to convincing others that process documentation is worth it, because we all feel passionately about process documentation, but clients often don't. Sometimes they don't see the value in it, and they may even call it a waste of time. And I'm wondering how you all go about persuading or convincing or getting buy-in for other people to start mapping out their processes themselves.
I learned the hard way not to convince people about these things. And so my approach to that is to use content. So doing things like this, I have an entire YouTube playlist about Puzzle that I'm sure will get longer in the next few weeks. And the people who end up being clients or end up being referral people for me are the people who have gone and watched my YouTube videos or listened to my podcast, and they see the value, they see the value on their own, and then they come to me and say, oh my god, this is amazing. So I met someone at a conference last year, and I sent her one YouTube video, and she sent me an 8-minute voice note back, like, where have you been all my life? I need to get my act together. Can you meet with my team on this day? So I like to let the content do the talking, and then attract the people who are going to value it. I mean, we've already talked about how you can literally show the value, but another example is I had a client that this was a dermatology clinic. So they had a couple of dermatology clinics, and they had a funnel, and they had someone who managed their website and their ads. And we had a 90-minute meeting where all we were doing was clicking through ClickFunnels to determine where people were going in their funnel, because they hadn't mapped it out. And so that's my time, that's the business owner's time, that's the time for their contractor. And after we had that meeting and I mapped it out, and they would ask me, like, hey, what's going on with this? I would just send them a puzzle link. So that whole need for a meeting like that was eliminated.
Brilliant.
For me, I lead with it all the time. Like I tell them I'm gonna document whether you want it or not. Like that's just part of it. I'm gonna do a tech audit, and I'm gonna document it just so I know what's going on. And so you can, if we're not working together or anything else, you can always go back and take it, and you know what's going on. And I think once a business owner has been in a place, like if you do a lot of launches or something like that, and things are boom boom boom, and you don't know what's going on, that's when it comes to them like, oh, this is why I need to document. Oh, you know, especially if you're bringing on no new people, it's imperative because usually as the owner, you don't have time to train every new person. You don't have time to go over the same things, especially in the middle of a launch or something like that. So if you tell them like that, they usually get it. And I just show them my own stuff also. But I'm gonna document regardless. So
Yeah, because they're gonna come back and they're gonna ask you,
yeah.
and
How did
yeah,
you
we're
do
not
it? And I'm not gonna save
exactly.
that in my head forever. Like, oh, it's here, go there.
Yeah, it's the same for me too. Like I've never convinced people. It's just a part of my methodology. So it's always like, you can't improve what you can't see. So we're going to map everything out. And my clients love it anyway, because they're already feeling disorganized. They're like, I know my business runs, but I don't really know how it actually runs. It feels inconsistent. And so they love the fact that when we're done working together, like I can give them the share links of their puzzle map or transfer everything over to their organization, which is now what ends up happening. But when we kind of do that activity audit in the beginning and we pick one process, even if they're like a little bit shaky on it and like, all right, I never did this before, like let's try it. They always have the big ahas with the big lengthy draining process. Like I had a client, but also I had so many clients say this of like, when we're looking at what their employees have been doing to accomplish a task of like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I had no idea they were doing that, or I didn't know that they had to do this, and this just to be able to like email our audience. And there's so many ahas really that come out of that for them. And, we end up saving so much cost and they see the benefit so quickly. But yeah, I'm typically attracting people who want to feel organized, who want to feel efficient, who want to see the big picture. And if that's not you, totally okay. But it's probably just not a match for the kind of services that I think that we're all offering to folks.
Mhm.
I think on
Perfect.
the topic of having that revelation of, oh, this is what it takes to do, XYZ for your team. I got a request from a client last week, and it's a client in the UK, and one of her team members was like, hey, the owner wants to launch, start their launch tomorrow. you know, and we need this, and this, automation and Zap and blah, blah, blah. And they had asked just like a single question about it that was enough of a catalyst for me to map out, like, hey, this is what you're going to need if you're planning a launch, right? And so having that visual of like, hey, this is actually 2 weeks of work, not like 12 hours of work. And,
Right.
tomorrow for you is
Mm.
literally 8 hours from now for me. So let's figure something out. And having that visual of like, hey, these are all the things that need to happen, just supported that, where the owner was like, oh, okay, we were able to work out a solution that, made everybody happy. But having that visualization was key to that conversation.
I think I love that the most. Those
The
owners who
scope creep
have
of it
like,
all.
oh, that's not that much, and then you show them on the map like, oh, okay, that's not doable.
So I want to tie a thread that you all kind of alluded to a comment that we have on LinkedIn from Cam and Oliver. You said that they eventually come back to you and say, "How do you do that?" Or they come back to you with the problem they originally had after they asked you like not to create the documentation, or you did create the documentation but they haven't visited it. So Cameron Oliver said, I was working with the CEO of a $12 million ARR business a couple years ago who was process allergic. That seems like a bad allergy to have. Said it was too much. He just came back to me last week because due to slipping quality and efficiency metrics in their buyer journey, they deemed it related to people not following a correct process to get the outcome. So there's a couple more questions that we're going to get to before we get to the question by admin tribes from Yusuf. I want to talk about format. I want to talk about when you decide to create a visual documentation, when you decide to create written documentation, and when you decide to film a video. So I want to talk about like those different formats and kind of your decision-making criteria about how you typically go about that.
Well, the beautiful thing is that you can combine all of those things. I mean, one of the reasons for the breakup text was that
Mhm.
in those other tools, everything is very two-dimensional. It's like, yeah, I can have a bunch of boxes, but there's no place to put the data. And so having the ability to really combine all of those things is super key. For me, I will create a video. um, I do a lot of 1 to 2 minute videos that are for the client, that is, when you get to this step, here's what you do next. So that that documentation is on the step for them, because when we launch a new process, I'm usually getting clients who are going from very low tech adoption or very disjointed tech adoption to having a consolidated system, and it's completely a sea change of how they're operating. And so in addition to, having calls and training them live, I have these artifacts basically in the places where they're going to need them. So on the puzzle step, or in Airtable notes or documentation, where it's like, oh, did you forget how to do this? Here's a quick video. So I like to use video for that a lot. I also will use video to document how I built something if I know that 3 months from now me is not going to remember. Um, and so I just did that last night. I actually had a client school me about something we were trying to do with Fillout and Airtable that I thought could not be done the way that she was trying to do it. And she was like, I'll show you. So I immediately was like, I need to make a YouTube about this. So yeah, that's when I use video. And then text, I'll use, in my step notes, I want to know everything that future me might want to remember about this step. So if it's a form, I want to know, where is the edit link for that form, the view link, where is that form embedded? Because I've actually lost track of where I've embedded forms before. I want to know, I'll make an entity to figure out like what data are we collecting. If it's an email, I want the actual email and the step, and then I want the link to where I need to change the email in the email service provider. Like everything goes in the notes for me. And then if it's an actual SOP, then there might be like a link to a Google Doc or something.
For me, I do video a lot. Only if it's like in the moment, quick, got to get it out. I'm showing somebody how to do stuff. I always revert to video first. Um, as far as written, my retainer clients, if I've done this over and over again and we're doing something new, I usually document everything I'm doing in my task and ClickUp, and then I can transfer that onto a puzzle map. Uh, and then drop everything I need in Airtable, because I use Airtable too. So it's like a nice mesh, but just to get it down, whether even if I'm on a call or something with somebody, I'm handwriting the steps, and then again I can just dump it. So it's like the quickest place to put the information all in one place, because it's all about having one place that you can go to, then you can lay it all out nicely and um, in a puzzle, because is what was getting me with other tools. Is I would get stuck on trying to make the box pretty, trying to make it the same size, trying to get the arrows right.
Not the arrows.
Oh my God. So yeah, I just like to capture as I'm going, and then put it, especially if we're in the middle of a launch, because I'm going to usually give my client just a C view link anyway. And I make a new segment for each thing we're doing just to keep it nice and neat.
Love it. Yeah, video is like I feel like the best quick capture tool at the beginning of a process. So I'm in my business, and what I'm doing, I'm less handing those kinds of processes off to clients, but more like encouraging clients to start capturing the processes for themselves. And so yeah, I think a great way to do that in the very beginning. It costs you no extra time and effort if you just create a Loom recording of what you would normally do and then turn that into an SOP or just process steps that you can map out later. I think that's fantastic. For me, written documentation tends to be sort of my foundational way of documenting things because it's searchable, it's skimmable, you can use it with AI, which is especially important right now. Like we're going through some things at Fillout where we're going to be really revamping up like our knowledge management and our processes, in the first half of next year. And a lot of that is being able to leverage AI to skim a lot of these processes and turn the correct steps to the team at the right time. Also implementing those things in macros. So there's a lot you can do. Like you have a lot of flexibility when it comes to written documentation. So I always like to lean on that, but make it easy for myself to actually create that written documentation. And then with like screenshots and like arcades and things like that, if folks are going that route, they're kind of like more of a middle ground for me. I'm hesitant sometimes to use screenshots, especially if it's in the UI of another tool, which has the ability to change their UI anytime they want, which often happens. And then so all of that process documentation, kind of gets outdated. So that doesn't mean don't use images and screenshots and arcade and all of the other sort of visual things, but yeah, definitely being mindful of when you use it and if it's actually necessary to explain the step.
Totally, totally. And I'll add on to that too. We use Puzzle as our knowledge base for all of our processes, and it almost acts as an operational desktop. And by an operational desktop, I don't go to Zapier.com anymore. I don't go to HubSpot or Adio to go look for a workflow. I go through Puzzle. Puzzle is like my glimpse into the three-dimensional space of my business. And so I don't have to search for anything because I know where that step lives in the context of the business. And so my sidebars, like you all have mentioned, they have a lot of notes, writing out more technical items, most times a video embedded in there, which we embed Looms, but actually later today we'll be able to embed YouTube videos and any general iframe video into the sidebar. It's going to be awesome.
All
So
right.
that video component is going to get a lot more powerful, being able to kind of take videos from all over the place and place them into your visual knowledge base so that it is that operational desktop. I think a lot of the confusion from like a Notion build out or like a Google Drive is it's not intuitive how it's a foldering structure and your operations doesn't belong in a folder. It's not hierarchical. It's not hierarchical. It's relational. And I think that's the ultimate differentiator, building it in Puzzle is you can really build that relationality between people, process, and tools. We had a question come in from admin tribes about, and this is so important because we can build great documentation, but how do we keep it up to date? And this is a pain point truly like in Puzzle too. And there's not really a solution that we've launched yet. However, we have a few ideas. How do you go about updating your documentation and keeping it and maintaining it over time?
I'm smiling because I literally I think my latest podcast episode is called Process Mapping Should Be as Routine as Brushing Your Teeth. And I have
Saw that.
Puzzle open at all times if I am working. And so if I make a change to a process, I'm going to take 30 seconds or a minute to go update that process with whatever I did. And that, I mean, I think people make this a really big lift in their minds, but once you have your basic processes done, it is about habit change and maintaining that habit because it really isn't a big lift to do that, but it's a huge weight off to know that I can go back and go, oh, this is how I did this thing. Or, if clients come and they say, where are we at with this process? And I can send them a view link and I'll be like, if it's green, it's done. You know? So I think this is probably not as big of a problem as people make it in their minds. I think it's really just about habit change. And once you have the processes building, especially, the larger your team, you have to build that culture of documentation. And I recently like mapped out sort of the 4 phases to get to peaceful processes. And the last phase is that culture and habit change where you now are like have changed your identity. Your company identity to we are a company who maps our processes and keeps our documentation up to date. And now we have a tool that makes that easier to do. It's not just going to go into some Google Doc, in Google Drive to die. And so that is the last phase because I can hand off the most accurate, most beautiful maps to my client. But then if they don't keep them up 3 months from now, they're not going to trust them and it's not going to be valuable anymore.
Yeah, the same for me, it's a habit. So again, even if I change a step on my stuff or my client stuff, I've made a note of it. I go back and change it in in Puzzle to keep it up to date. And really, I just tell my clients, you're going to have to put on your calendar when you're going to do these admin type things. Just like you would do a tech audit and audit your stuff, people wait to the end of the year to do stuff. But if you go ahead and set things in stone, it, to like on this date, every quarter, we're going to look at our maps and make sure all of our automations are up to date. I actually have a task to always go back every month and make sure my automations are up to date. And so just drilling that into your clients and your team members and stuff, I think that'll help it become routine. Like you said, brushing your teeth, it's all about habit and to couple it with something that you already do. If you're looking at your finances, make sure you're also looking at your processes, make sure that's up to date. So just coupling it with something and getting it on your calendar, scheduling time, or because if it isn't on the calendar for me, it doesn't exist. So
True.
that's how to make it a habit and make sure it stays top of mind.
Yeah, great points. Rhonda, I love what you said is that this has to be a part of a culture change where like we value this documentation management and updating as something that we all do. It's like a regular activity or it's a routine activity. And I'm also curious, like, Yusuf, I'd be curious to understand like what what feels difficult about updating documentation, because one of the things that I see is that folks that are like, oh, we have all this documentation and like I don't know if it's up to date anymore and all of that is when you're using documentation like solely to just be reference material that lives in some kind of Google Drive or Notion folder or something, rather than it being actually integrated into your work management process. Because if it's integrated into your work management process and there's some sort of like task tracking for making sure these things get done, there's probably also another form of measurement where, I mean, each process is responsible for a specific outcome, right? And so measuring those outcomes, understanding like, are they high quality outcomes? Are they happening consistently? Does the team have any sort of confusion or questions? Things like that. Those are all good things to pay attention to. But I think like having that documentation integrated in your actual like execution process and your work management is a very important step to take that I feel like a lot of folks miss. And then on the other side of this, like those are more of like the reactive parts, but I love, what Samantha was saying about like, hey, schedule some time for yourself to actually review this documentation on a periodic basis. And so, maybe there's some documentation or a process that is a little bit riskier or responsible for bigger outcomes that maybe you want to review more often. And maybe there are others that's like, okay, this is kind of like this routine, like level 3 sort of thing that maybe we just review around annual planning time. But that's a good proactive way to start setting that up. Also, like role changes, those are like a perfect opportunity if you're hiring people or like you have people on your team churning. as soon as that other person comes in, that's what I do. Anytime I hire somebody, I'm like, this is all of the onboarding documentation. These are all of the processes you're responsible for in your role. Carry them out and like let me know what doesn't make sense. Let me know where you got stuck. Like let me know what you right. So you can really rely on other members of your team, or even just like a going through like a peer review process if you don't have a large team to help with, and having other people go through that process and see kind of what they stumble on.
I was gonna also say that if you have team members or employees, it's good to assign it to someone that's their ownership to keep that document, especially if you have different, you know, segments of your business. Like the marketing person is responsible for keeping the marketing product. Like go ahead and delegate that and assign ownership to different team members. And I know Kronda, you did that, and I love that about that's how you assigned your team members. You're responsible for keeping this update. So I think that's super helpful. And as far as it being like you said, being overwhelming to make these changes, again, if you do it, often, it's like keeping your house clean. 15 minutes a night, it's easy, you breeze through. But if you wait a year to clean your home, then yeah, it's going to be crazy. So,
That is such a good point. I am so much more comfortable adding 2 or 3 steps every week than needing to do a full-blown audit because I have no idea what part of the map is updated. And when you're keeping your documentation up to date, it then becomes so much more than documentation too. It becomes a strategic asset because your entire team now can go and rely on that information. Like Michael said in the comments, he says you have to make sure your team is working off of the documentation. So it's being referenced consistently. And if it's not, you make that little edit, in time when you're doing that job, you're like, oh, wait, that's not how we do it today. Like, I'm going to go ahead and make this edit. But then even your leadership layer can come into the documentation and maybe they're not using it to click the buttons and submit the forms and send the documents, but they now can have a strategic conversation about how work gets done so that you start evaluating AI tools and how AI can be embedded into it. And so it's not just documentation like, oh, this is how we do things in the past. It's also an asset if it's up to date on how you're going to do things in the future. And it's that continuous improvement that happens. Kronde?
We absolutely cannot leave this call without saying the words decision grade documentation. You said those words to me like a month ago, and I was like, that's it. That's it. Like, I remember when one of the first things, I had a client come to me and she was like, I'm really sick of this email platform, and it's always messing up and I want to change it. And being able to have the conversation to say, hey, this is how many processes this tool is responsible for inside of your system, because over the past 2 years, like all sorts of software have been raising prices, have been just like doing all these things. And, every single week it's like, Honeybook did this, Dubsado did that. Like, I literally saw a thread. It was like, I feel like this tool isn't worth it. Should I use this tool instead? And, everybody's in the comments, giving their 2 cents or whatever. And I'm like, you have no idea what that tool is doing in your business. And so I remember when you briefly took away the feature where if you hit the search in the tool palette, it would show you like the total
Yes.
steps. And I use that every week, and then one day it was gone and I was like at your doorstep, like, bring that back. I need that. Yeah, it's not just enough to see like, okay, these are all the steps inside the processes. That having that total that's like, hey, do you really want to start a migration where you're going to have to redo these 500 steps?
Mhm.
Like, that's a conversation that will make a business owner sit up and take notice and be like, oh, am I just having a temper tantrum? Like, what do I want to do here?
Totally.
Yeah. And if they do decide to do that migration and switch over those 500 steps, we know exactly what 500 steps need to be accounted for and planned for in the new tool, which is another great
Exactly.
benefit of that feature. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the first really um, detailed processes that I mapped was my onboarding because I switched out my checkout platform, which is not insignificant. And because it was mapped, I knew exactly which steps I had to replicate. And I just went in and said, okay, now I got to disconnect this and connect it over here. And it was probably the smoothest I've ever done for a process of that size and importance.
Yeah, I want to show something real quick because I actually have I call it my process graveyard. Um, because if I come here, I have this tab called archived, and you can see that this is probably 30 maybe processes that are all archived. And I don't delete my steps, to be honest. I put them in this archive box because if I need to reference it for how did we do that process, I need inspiration for how we're kind of going to build a future process. You can see how many HubSpot steps are in here. And I know HubSpot lovers, they're not going to want to see that, but there were 226 steps. This is the feature that Kronda desperately loves to use. And we took it away for a short moment and we put it right back. But you can see we were spending like a very high amount of money for a small company on a CRM. And frankly, Adio did everything that we needed it to do. And so in a matter of 3 weeks, I unhooked HubSpot and all 226, workflows, forms, meeting links, you name it, and implemented a collection of other tools to replace HubSpot because HubSpot is a truly powerful platform. But it would have been impossible, literally impossible to do without a map of that documentation there. Samantha, Jesse, what are some big time kind of migrations that you have gone through using documentation?
I'm going to default to Samantha on this one, only because I haven't done a lot of migrations with the way that I'm working with clients. Usually they're kind of handling their own migration. So yeah,
Got it.
Samantha, if you have anything to add on this topic.
For me, was migrating a client from a combination of MailChimp and HubSpot into Keep. And they had a pretty big puzzle map we did because of all the things their office manager was having to do manually. And so that to that has been the biggest so far is that because they they literally had documentation and stuff in a Google Drive, but seeing it laid out was like, oh, and how much time that she was having to spend to do all this manual process just when a client. And so you can imagine when their busy season hit, and she's having to onboard a bunch of people manually and keep track of, like, it was chaotic. So just doing that big migration and from two different two CRMs into one, because again, they were having to keep up with that also. So
Yeah, I have a client going through a Salesforce kit to Active Campaign. So the first thing is like, okay, let's get everything out, get it into Airtable where we can clean it up, organize it, have some structural changes and some naming conventions and like all that stuff and before like going into a new platform. Um, I think we should also mention the glory of step coloring and being able to highlight those manual processes just by making a rule is really, really powerful. And being able to tell different stories with your highlighting of steps,
Mhm.
like as you're on a sales call or a client call or whatever it may be. I love it so much.
Awesome.
I know
Awesome.
you said this wasn't a commercial for Puzzle, but
It turned out
I
to
can't
be.
help myself. I can't help myself. We would
Well,
not all be here talking about whimsical, okay?
Right.
That's just the truth.
well, Kronda, Jesse, Samantha, thank you so much for your time today. We are at time, so we will be closing out the webinar, and we'll be distributing some content about what we covered today. But thank you all again. You all are like process geniuses in my mind, and I'm very grateful to have you on the platform.
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you. This was super
Thanks for
fun.
having us.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.